Senator Plett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I was not going to speak to this until after a meeting earlier today. I will be brief. I want to commend Senator Harder for his riveting speech, and I know there are others that should take note of the length of that speech and maybe adjust theirs accordingly, but that is for another day, Senator Gold. That is for another day, Senator Gold. Senator Gold and I will take note. In any event, I think I need to put some facts on the record, and I do promise you I will be brief, but I want to put some facts on the record regarding the Trudeau government's commitment to Ukraine. And let me start by quoting the Edmonton Sun on the government's record with respect to Ukraine. Trudeau has once again overpromised and underdelivered. On Ukraine, like all other matters, the Liberals are quick to announce, slow to act, and fail to deliver. Justin Trudeau is a big talker and a little doer when it comes to Ukraine. He's made all these announcements of hundreds of millions of dollars of different equipment, and he's never actually delivered any of them.
2 tanks.
According to the government data compiled by Le Devoir, almost 60% of the military assistance that Trudeau has pledged to Ukraine since Russia invaded on February 24th, $1.4 billion of $2.4 billion has yet to arrive. This includes a $406 million surface-to-air missile system that the Trudeau government announced with great fanfare over a year ago. It also includes 35 high-resolution drone cameras valued at $76 million announced at the end of last summer. Small arms and ammunitions were $60 million. $25 million of winter clothing. We're in summer now. They promised winter clothing. $25 million worth last October, plus armored vehicles, artillery, and satellite communication systems. For over 2 years, Ukraine has been asking Canada and our allies for more military assistance, including artillery shells and rockets. The Conservatives have been calling on the government to increase the production of key munitions, such as 155mm shells, and to replace all the weapons donated to Ukraine so that the Canadian Armed Forces can protect Canadians and be a dependable partner for our allies. The Trudeau government has failed to sign contracts to increase artillery shell production. In fact, when answering questions last fall, government officials confirmed that the Trudeau government had not increased production in Canada by a single shell. This is despite the head of the Canadian Armed Forces confirming that we only have a 3-day supply of shells available for our defense, and despite the continuing need for shells by our Ukrainian allies. Earlier this month, and following the Ukrainian requests, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre called on the government to donate, and Senator MacDonald already mentioned them, 83,000 Canadian Armed Forces rockets to Ukraine. These rockets were requested by the Armed Forces of Ukraine in November 2023. They are slated, as Senator MacDonald said, for disposal by the CAF. The Trudeau government has failed to even commit to delivering these rockets that Ukraine desperately needs. And listen to this, folks. Ukraine said, we will come pick them up. You don't have to deliver them. The problem is that they can't ship them out of Montreal because the containers are all full of stolen cars. So they can't get any of these in there. That was a bit of an assumption, but considering the number of stolen cars we have in Canada in Montreal, I think that's pretty safe. Let me quote Christian Leprecht, a professor at the Royal Military College. All these delays necessarily have enormous consequences in terms of security for the Ukrainians and make the storage of arms and ammunitions in which they currently find themselves even more difficult. It is clear that the government's words regarding Canada's lasting support, on which Ukraine can count on, are not in line with reality. And this has an impact both on the battlefield and on Canada's image with our allies. Allies who perceive us more and more as indifferent to this war and, above all, unreliable. Canada made promises without having coordinated ministries and agencies involved in these deliveries and without knowing the production and delivery capacity of its military industry. In a book launched a couple of weeks ago on Canada and the Ukraine war, the authors make it clear that Canada is pursuing an image campaign where the main objective is to show the maple leaf over any other consideration, including the fate of Ukraine. When all help, including loans, is completed, when it's completed, Canada ranks 31st out of 39 countries that provided direct help to Ukraine in terms of their GDP. We are at the level of Portugal. As I said, big talker. Let's look at the rest of the Liberal record. Initially, when President Zelensky asked to please do not provide a turbine to Russia so that it could fuel and fund its war machine, the Liberal government sent the turbine. Justin Trudeau allowed Canada to supply detonators for mines that are being used to blow up Ukrainians. Ukrainians have asked Canada for our LNG to replace Russian fuel they are using, and the Liberals said no. Instead, the Liberals decided to put carbon tax language into the free trade agreement. The value of frozen Russian assets is estimated to be at least $320 billion. With no reasonable prospect for Russia paying compensation to Ukraine anytime soon, and Ukraine's need for both short and long-term financial assistance, confiscations of Russian assets become the only just and viable option, especially in view of the fact that up to $1 trillion will be needed for Ukraine to fully recover. Justin Trudeau is doing nothing on that front. And we know that he embarrassed the Ukrainian president by having a Nazi invited to a major state visit. Ukraine has had a carbon tax since 2011, Senator Almondvar, we're aware of that, which it needs to one day be part of the European Union. No other trade deal until now has made mention of the carbon pricing mechanism, and the agreement currently in place with Ukraine does not include any mention of it. Why is Justin Trudeau so obsessed with this carbon tax that he wants to include it in an agreement with an ally who is at war?
Fighting for their
Why does Justin Trudeau think that Ukraine needs a carbon tax more than ammunition? Speaking of obsessions of the Trudeau government that have nothing to do with the needs of Ukrainians, what about the $4 million announced for stabilizing a gender and diversity working group to promote gender transformative mine action in Ukraine? Because, of course, a country at war needs gender transformation action, not ammunition. And I am sure that those brave Ukrainian soldiers on the front will find comfort that Canada is giving money to study gender disparity issues in the Ukrainian media. One has to wonder why Winston Churchill never thought about asking for this kind of help when London was being bombed in 1941. For Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland, Ukraine is just another opportunity to do virtue signaling and photo ops. Another opportunity to grandstand, to pretend to care and make empty promises. Let me give you the news, colleagues. It is no longer working. Canadians and the rest of the world now realize this simple fact. Justin Trudeau is not a serious Prime Minister. He is not worth the cost. Conservatives have supported and will continue to support Ukraine in its fight to protect its territorial integrity from the illegal invasion by Russia and Vladimir Putin. As soon as we are in power, we will deliver the munitions and weapons Ukrainians need to defend their sovereignty from Russian aggression. And we will do all of this without any reference to a carbon tax, a tax that we will axe when we form government. Senator Gold has been pushing disinformation about this bill, pretending that it is urgent and that we pass it. The government chose to have a coming into force date for C-57 at its discretion. Colleagues, we could pass this bill today and it will not come into force on royal assent. And it would not come into force on royal assent. So us passing this bill today will do nothing, colleagues, nothing. In fact, the government itself in the other place, Senator Gold is not in a hurry to adopt the bill. On December 14th, we offered to pass the bill in the House of Commons. This is what Minister Gould, the House Leader, said to our colleagues in the House of Commons, and I quote, "It is really important that Conservatives reflect over the holidays and perhaps consider changing their position, because it would be really nice to be able to show Ukraine that solidarity and unanimity that the House has always shown Ukraine. I am going to give them time and space to reflect." She gave them 7 weeks to reflect, colleagues. I think we should have 2 weeks to reflect. That's reasonable. That's reasonable. That's less than half the time that the House needed to reflect. I think we should be afforded that. So, colleagues, let's take the 2 weeks to reflect on this. And let's come back here refreshed on March 19th, and let's vote on this bill. Ukrainians will still need help at that time, and we will still be able to continue to offer help without giving any. Thank you, colleagues.